Brand. All right, good. Good morning. Luckily, the subject of the day is short and sweet, so barring any Facebook tech difficulties, welcome to Zapier, simple zaps that make my life easy. And that's just what this is. I've seen a lot of, sort of content on Zapier over the years where it gets like ridiculously complex. It was almost, at one point, I remember seeing this thread a while back, um, where people were almost like showing off that they had these like 60-step zaps. I don't even know what they did. I can't imagine what they were doing or trying to accomplish in 60 steps in a zap. All I know is it sounded like a recipe for disaster. If one thing goes wrong in one step in that zap, you're screwed. So anyway, but I guess it was impressive that people could make these incredibly intricate zaps. I wanted to look at the simpler side of Zapier, right? And so that's why I called it simple zaps that make my life easier. These are often, the longest zap I'm going to show you this morning in terms of steps is for my onboarding process, and I think that has oh, hi, welcome. I think it has let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 or 7 steps. That's the longest one you're going to see today. I'm not going to dig too deep into how to create these. I have a course that teaches you how to create these, so if you want to go deeper, there's that. And generally speaking, and as always, when you do have questions about anything I've gone over anywhere, reach out to me and let me know, and I can always either help you or point you in the right direction to whichever resource I have. Also, just last housekeeping item this morning, everything you wanted to know or everything you need to know about S-Corps is happening today at noon Pacific till 1 p.m. So you can still register for that. If you need the link, let me know. I'll post it in the chat. Bill Hershey's asking, what's the name of that course? There's a couple of courses actually, which Bill, because I know you're in 97 and up, you have access to them. There's automating your onboarding process, and then there's also automate your training or coaching business. Both, anything that has automate in the title of the course pretty much is going to deal with Zapier, because that's what Zapier is in a nutshell. Somebody asked me yesterday, what's Zapier? And it's a cloud connector, right? So Zapier will grab data from one place and push it to another. And it's very, very useful because you don't have to be a developer or know any coding in order to get these things done. Sometimes the most technical it gets is, like, I was setting a new Zap up yesterday that was dealing with my Stripe account. And so you need what's called an API key. And there's different kinds of API keys. There's live keys and there's secret keys. You don't really need to know anything technical even there. You just need to follow simple instructions. So when I was going to set that one up, I got stumped for like a second because I was like, oh crap, I don't know where the developer area in Stripe is, because you have to go into the developer area of these apps to get these API keys. But Zapier was very smart. When I looked again, there was a link that you could click on that, as long as you're logged into your Stripe account, takes you right to the exact page where the exact key that you need is. So they make it easy for you to set this stuff up. And so that's what I want to stress. Like, don't stress out because you're like, oh, I'm not a coder, I don't know how to do this stuff. You don't need to be. They make this stuff super, super easy. And again, just think of it the way I described it just now. It's, you're grabbing data from one tool so that you can push it into another, right? That's the essence of what Zapier is built to do. I'm actually logging into my Zapier account right now so I can show you some of these zaps, right? And again, these are going to be simple. It's not going to be like, oh my God, that's crazy, 60-step zap. So the first thing I want to talk about, and then of course I'll show you, is a lot of us use ClickUp, right? And ClickUp has a great little extension. I'm going to share my screen here before I forget. It has a great extension so that if I want to take an email and add it as a task in ClickUp, it makes it very easy to do, and it's very dynamic. Let me just bring up my email to see if I can show you an example of this real quick. All right, so let's go here. So let's pretend like this CVS ad is something I want to follow up on, right? Ooh, and I'm now logged out of Nimble. So all I have to do is click this little ClickUp icon that's right here in the email. And ClickUp will bring up a dialog where I can add it as a task. And the thing about this is I still have to take the time. I mean, I can pretty much in a couple of clicks get it done, but if I, but otherwise I normally kind of take the time, fill in a description, assign the date. I can assign it to, I can create an assignee. So I can do all that, but sometimes just on the fly, I don't even want to spend the time doing that. So I created a Zap as an alternative. When I'm just trying to clean out my inbox, I created a label. If I start typing ClickUp, there it is. That says add to ClickUp, right? What happens next is Zapier comes in. And let's go to Zaps. And here's the Zap that I did. The difference is literally all I had to do there was add the label and I can archive the email, right? And so Zapier kicks in and I created this Zap where the trigger is based on, the trigger is always the first step in the Zap, right? Some event has to take place, which is called the trigger that tells Zapier, okay, let's get started, right? So in this case, the trigger is based on the fact that I've added the label, add to ClickUp to an email, right? So anytime I assign that label, that's the trigger. That tells Zapier, okay, let's trigger this Zap to work. And then the next thing I did was I said, let's create a task in ClickUp. During setup, you'll be asked to choose, which app you want to use for the next step, right? And so that's what this is. And if I go to customize task, you have to take your time, of course, and fill all this out. The workspace, this is referring to my ClickUp setup, of course. So it's my Nerd Enterprises workspace. I have a space called Nerd Enterprises Inc. HQ. There's a folder called Nerd HQ. There's a list called main high-level tasks. So this is where I want this newly added task from the email to go, right? I didn't use a template. And here's where I can dynamically pull in information from that email. So when you're setting this up, it's going to ask you to pull in, a sample. So you want to have in this case, I needed to have a recently tagged email with that tag. And when I did, an email from Josh had just come in that I just tagged, for the purposes of testing this. And so that's why you're seeing Josh's information here. If I wanted to, I can click in here and I can grab any of the available pieces of information from the email. And you can see it's a lot. In fact, you see how it has the message URL? I included that here because I want the task in ClickUp to actually show that. So let me go over to ClickUp now. And I'll show you what the end result looks like once it's there in ClickUp. Doing the multi-screen thing. All right, so here's the task. It's literally just this minute came into ClickUp, right? It grabs the title, but this is what makes it easy for me is it puts this link in here so that even if I wasn't still in the email, let's say I've archived this and I'll close Gmail, right? I can click on this link and it will take me right to that exact email. And what I like about this, of course, is it lets me create this task, which I can comment on, put notes in, add attachments to, do whatever follow-up I need. And then when I'm ready to, if I need to, I can, in a click, get back to the original email, bang the reply button, right? And then do whatever follow-up I need from there, right? Now, in reality, using the extension from Chrome is better if there's attachments. The extension will actually bring the attachments over as an attachment to the task. So the only reason I use this particular workflow is, as I said earlier, when I'm in a rush, I don't want to take the time to even fill this stuff out for ClickUp. I just want to quickly bang this label button, start typing CLI, choose the label, and then archive it, because that way I know it's going to be in ClickUp, so I won't forget it. It's just a little process I have for making sure I don't drop any balls, but also at the same time enabling me to move quickly, because sometimes the emails, if I don't really keep on top of them daily, in my case, they can pile up. I can end up with 400 to 600 emails in my inbox very quickly if I don't stay on top of them. So I need processes, and sometimes more than one, as in this case, for being able to get through those emails very quickly, right? So that's adding Gmail to ClickUp. And again, it's a very simple two-step Zap. You can I could even pull in a URL. If the email had attachments, I could pull in the URL. That would take me to the attachments. It ends up having you download those attachments from Zapier, which Call me kooky. I just didn't love it. So I didn't choose that option. I'd rather click the message URL to get back to the original email, and then download it. Or at that point, I can go back and use the ClickUp extension to add it into ClickUp properly with attachments included, right? So this is just something I use when it's sort of in a pinch. I want to make sure I don't forget to follow up on that email. And that's the bare minimum that I want to do right now so I can move on quickly. Any questions?
I just like to add that using keyboard shortcuts in Gmail for this is also a big time saver for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just hit L for the label and then type in CLI. And hit
I
enter.
have to remember to do that. I'll be honest, I haven't. So you just hit the letter L to add a label?
Mm-hmm. You have to have your keyboard shortcuts turned on.
Okay, so let's open up Lauren's email here. How do I turn on my keyboard shortcuts in the settings?
You can hit L first to see if it's on. But yeah, see all settings.
Mine are probably not because I've never done it. I've just never.
You want to click on see all settings up at the top.
Oh, I thought it was there already.
And then this one is in advanced, I believe. Custom keyboard shortcuts, enable. Oh,
Right,
that's the custom ones. Okay, click cancel. At the bottom, cancel.
Oh, cancel there.
Okay, go back to the settings. I have a problem with it every time that I go to a new. Go back.
Yeah, there's so many settings.
No, you're jumping too far ahead. See all settings. And then I just do a search, Control F for keyboard.
There it is. Keyboard shortcuts are off. Keyboard shortcuts are on.
All right, and then go down. And, no, you have to make sure you click save at the bottom.
Oh yeah, I always do that. All right.
Take the Kajabi support message, for example. Now you hit L.
There it is, and then it comes up. So now where do you go? I assume there's a help file somewhere that shows you what all the keyboard shortcuts are?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything. You can Google that shit and it'll pop up.
Right.
But yeah, CLI.
Wait, what?
Type in CLI.
Oh, CLI. Oh.
Yeah, and then you hit enter.
Enter. Why?
Okay, because you wanted to have.
You lost me. As I'm typing CLI, it's going to filter my labels, right?
Yeah. I'm not touching the mouse at all. Right. The backspace.
All right, so CLI, and then
hit enter.
Well, enter. Oh, so it did add to ClickUp, but how did I know it was going to do add to ClickUp? Because it was just the first one?
Yes.
I guess so. And it looks like if I use my down arrow, I can select a different one. Yeah, so.
And now you can hit E. No, not here.
E.
And it'll archive it.
Perfect. All right, good to know. Good to know. Thank you for that.
Sorry about that squirrel there.
No worries. No worries. Squirrels are good sometimes. They taste great. I thought I saw the chat popping up, but as usual, I can't find the chat on my screen. There it is.
Nice one, Greg. Thanks.
Oh, there we go. All right. So that's adding Gmail to ClickUp, right? And you can, I mean, whatever. If you use Asana, you can do the same thing with Asana or whatever you use. You can probably take an email from Gmail and add it like in a row in Google Sheets and just take pieces of information from the email and stick them in different columns in a Google Sheet if you wanted to, including the URL back to the email. So if you're doing something very sort of simple as far as like tracking tasks in Google Sheets, you know, you could even do something like that there. And again, the cool thing is that you can grab the URL that takes you right back to that exact email. So just by putting that piece of information wherever you want it, you can easily get back to the email. So you put the data in a place where you want to do the follow-up, make comments, whatever you have to do, and then you give yourself the trail of breadcrumbs, so to speak, that takes you right back to the source, which in the case of email usually is, something where you want to be able to respond, right? So that's adding Gmail to ClickUp. The next one I want to show you is adding attachments to Google Drive. Now, I'll give you the kind of context for this. I have a client who does a lot of factoring. And so I'm copied on the emails from their factor with a bunch of different reports. But there's one report in particular that when I get it, I want to make sure I drop it into a Google Drive folder. Because then later on when I go to work on that client's stuff, this particular report is the one I need. It shows every time they've gotten any funding from the factor, it gives me all the details I need to do the accounting on that, right? To show how much they've borrowed, what was repaid, changes to AR, the fees, everything is in this one report. And they send a bunch of other reports I don't care about. So I wanted to create a process where I could selectively choose from among the emails that I get from the factor, which ones I wanted to take whatever attachment might be there in the email and stick it in a particular Google Drive folder. So that's this one. It's called MedForce Loan Reports. And again, it's a simple zap, but it saves me a ton of time. So same kind of trigger, it's based on a label. So I created a label called MedForce Attachments. And now whenever I assign that label, MedForce Attachments, to an email in my inbox, it's going to upload the attachments right into Google Drive. And so the client has a folder within the client folder called Loan Reports. So that's the folder it's going to go in, right? And over here, it's going to take the file based on all attachments, right? And then if I need to, I can convert it to a particular kind of Google document, but I don't need to do that in this case. These are PDFs. And let me see if I can show you a quick example of this kind of in action. And let me see, MedForce. I'm looking for not just one of their emails, but one that has the particular report that I want. Here we go. Found one. So this is the report, the loan report that I need. Again, I get aging reports and other stuff. I don't, I archive them, I save them, but I don't need them dropped into the folder like this one. So what this does is it saves me the trouble of clicking on this to download it and then browsing over to the folder again. In just a couple of clicks, I can go boom, and I can go MedForce, MED, and MedForce attachments, right? And now I can archive this. And in a couple of minutes, this loan report, which is 2053, 2831-1, because it's from August 31st, right? So let me find their folder real quick, because within a minute or so, it should be in there. And here, of course, Google Drive, it's a file streaming, so it goes there, right? It looks like I may have already manually dropped that one in. But let's see, and if you want a Zap to run, you don't want to wait for it to, because like my Zapier account is configured to run them like every 5 minutes or something. But if I want to just run it now, just to test it or whatever, I can come over here and choose run. It's triggering on one new item, meaning it hadn't run on that one yet. Google Drive upload file was successful, close. So that's the way you can kind of force it, like, just say run this right now. And I'll refresh. It may still take a minute for Google Drive to kind of, sync it over to the Drive file stream that we've got here. There it is. And you can tell because the date, right? The date modified. It just came in with the timestamp, September 11th, 8:33 a.m., right? So just so you can kind of see this stuff in action. It's very effective. It's again, it's a time saver, right? And I do I do this a lot because again, I have, clients where I'm regularly, getting something like this where I want to, it's a way of picking something off in a pile of stuff that I get in my inbox and just, again, as quickly as I can assign the label to the email, because I'm not going to work on that client stuff right now. I just don't want to leave the email in my inbox. And again, I don't want to have to take even the extra 2 or 3 steps I'd have to take to browse to the location where I want to download the file. This makes it so much easier because as I just showed you, in a click, I assign the label and I know the attachment's going to show up where I need it so that in a week from now or whenever I happen to be working on that client's stuff next, it's going to be there. I can count on it. So that's adding attachments to Google Drive. And incidentally, when you set that part of it up where you're choosing which folder it goes into in Google Drive, you have to select it in steps. So first I had to select the My Drive folder. Then I have to go back into it and select the clients folder and then go back and select that particular clients folder. So you have to, it does take a few steps to get it set up, to get it going in the exact location where you want it. But once it's set up, it's beautiful. It saves a ton of time. Any questions now? If not, then I'm going to show you what I go over in great detail in my Automate Your Onboarding Process course, which is where I think I have that one here in my Nerd Admin folder. Yeah, here it is, New Client Setup. So here's what happens with this. When I get a new client, I send them to a form to fill out in Airtable, right? So the trigger of this Zap is when there's a new record in Airtable. And the way that's configured is there's a specific table called New Clients, which when they fill out the form, the information they submit drops into a new row in that table in Airtable, right? So the trigger is a new record appears in the New Clients table. As soon as that happens, first thing it does is it creates a task in ClickUp. And I just want a task that lets me know. So first of all, it's kind of a way of getting a notification besides the one I would get from Airtable anyway, that basically says, hey, the client has filled out the new client form, right? And I've configured this based on, you can see from the Airtable icon that this is dynamic content that I grabbed based on the information they submitted that I was able to get from the previous step from the new record in Airtable, right? So I get their company, and this is my standard naming convention for any client. It's always company name dash contact name, right? So I have it create a task with that name because guess what? Anytime I need that name for any kind of setup anywhere, now I can just copy and paste it right out of that task and ClickUp again. It saves me a few strokes on the keyboard or a few clicks of the mouse button, right? And then this is just a reminder to set up a space using the template for accounting projects. There's a reason why I couldn't have it dynamically just create the space for the client. I don't remember why, and for all I know, if I tried it again, that would work. But in the meantime, I just said, let me just create a task that will remind me to create the space. I didn't bother with a lot of this other stuff. I have
interesting things to point out is that
Mhm.
you set up these tasks at one point. They're constantly improving the integrations. They get deeper integrated with the apps that they're supporting. And so when you and I first started into ClickUp, they literally only had 3 available Zaps that for working with ClickUp. Now there's untold number of Zaps that are available for ClickUp.
Right. Yeah, so it's possible I could go back and recreate this and probably do a lot more with it than I was able to do when I created this originally, right? So for now, it just creates the task with the name based on the company name and the contact name. The task is going into a project where I have statuses based on priority, and it's based on, it's very much a David Allen getting things done concept of today, tomorrow, soon, or someday. This week, next week, those kinds of things. So it goes into a status of today because when I get a new client, that's a priority. I want to make sure I address it today, right? So this is a status that I created called today. Of course, we can have it add tags. Again, notice I have it assigning the priority as high. So again, just something to get my attention that, hey, this is something that needs to be dealt with right away, right? So that's the first thing it does. Next, it's going to create a new customer for me in my Nerd Enterprises QuickBooks Online company. And remember that naming convention? So that's how the customer is going to get named in the full name. I don't bother with the display name. I could easily repeat this there. The display name is probably where I should do it because that's like the name that sort of counts, but by default, it'll just use the full name there in QBO. And then I just break down the details, you know, where everything's going. This is sample data that it pulled in the day that I set up the Zap. I mentioned earlier, when you set up the trigger, it'll pull in test data, which is nice because it makes it easy to see, you know, what the data is and where it's going, so you can make sure you're kind of setting it up right, right? Over here, again, just address information. I keep it pretty simple. But you can see all the stuff you could populate based on what's available in QBO. And as Greg just pointed out, you know, there's probably even more stuff I could do if I kind of redid this now. Next thing it does, it creates a contact in Nimble, which is my CRM. So it adds them as a contact, and I believe it tags them client. Maybe not. I thought it did. That's something I should probably add, because I like having a tag for specifically for clients in my CRM, because then I can, you know, kind of carve out that group of people and send them a message. It's also going to create the folder that I need for the client in Google Drive. So it's going to go into my file structure where I have my active clients and create a folder that's based on that same naming convention. The name of the folder will be the company name dash the contact name. So this also helps me. I've always been very, very consistent in how I name things. It makes it very easy when I'm searching for something later on. So I just built this that way, obviously. Okay, I also use Smartsheet with just about every single client. So it creates a workspace in Smartsheet for the client. You'll notice also with the same naming convention. And finally, it creates a form submission in Kajabi. This is where they get tagged as a new client. This is not a form that anybody's ever going to actually find on the web and fill out. I created a form for the specific purpose of doing exactly this, where it's going to submit their information to the form based on what they entered in Airtable. And in Kajabi, I have an automation based on when this form gets submitted where it adds a tag called new client or client. Right? So that's how I get them tagged as a new client specifically. So they're in my Kajabi system as a new client or as a client. And then in Kajabi, I can send an email blast to all my clients, right? It's a way for me to be able to segment this specific group of people. So this is the most complex Zap I have for you. And so including the trigger, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps, right? Nothing crazy. Doesn't need to be. But this is how I automate the process of setting up a new client, right? It just makes life very, very easy. And then I can focus on the more important, more valuable stuff with the client, like making sure that I schedule a Zoom call with them within the first week of when they've signed up. And that I found to be invaluable, because, you know, if there's any confusion they have about what the next steps are in the onboarding process, that's where I get to clear it up, because I don't know what they don't know. And, you know, so I've found that it's super helpful to schedule a Zoom within a week of when they sign on as a client to address any questions they have, to make sure I can fill them in on anything else I need that I haven't gotten yet, and vice versa, right? Speaking of which, next thing I have that I wanted to share with you is something that actually used to be a Zap. It no longer is, and that is doing an integration between scheduling and Zoom. So when somebody schedules a call with me, originally in Zapier, if they went in, I'd send them a link to my ScheduleOnce calendar, and as soon as they scheduled a call with me, ScheduleOnce, Zapier would get triggered, and it would go create a Zoom meeting, right, unique for that person, because I used to have just 2 kind of recurring meetings in Zoom that I would use for all my one-on-ones. And what would happen is, over time, people who worked with me a lot would just save the Zooms, and all of a sudden I'd be in the middle of a session with somebody, and somebody would just kind of jump in because they were just fumbling around and clicking on things and didn't realize what they were doing. So I was like, no, I need a better process. That's not only is it embarrassing, it's just poor on a lot of levels. So I said, I want a system where every session I have has its own unique meeting information. So originally I built a Zap for that. Now, there are direct integrations with these services that I want to encourage you to check out. Zapier is great, but if there's a direct integration, that's almost always going to be better, right? So if I go here to scheduling, and let's go into it's now called Once Hub. And I'll just show you where this is. And if you're using Calendly or Acuity or any of the 8,000 other ones, you're going to find something very similar, I'm sure. So in Once Hub, let's go to Setup. And over here, we'll find integrations. There it is. And video conferencing. Okay, and you'll see I have my Zoom account connected. Once this integration is set up, and well, you know, if it wasn't already connected, it would just walk you through. It's very straightforward. You don't need to know anything special, but it'll walk you through, you know, it'll have you just kind of log into your Zoom account, and Zoom will confirm your permission to get it all set up. In this case, ScheduleOnce charges you for this particular integration, so I'm paying a little extra for it. But even that is worth it because it saves me so much time. Now, the second anyone sets up a call with me via ScheduleOnce, ScheduleOnce pings Zoom, creates a unique meeting ID just for that meeting, sticks it in the calendar appointment, and now that Zoom information is included in a series of reminders, which I've configured in ScheduleOnce, so that when somebody schedules a call with me, if they do it far enough in advance, they'll get a reminder a week before. They will also get a reminder a day before, an hour before, and 10 minutes before. So nobody has any excuses about not showing up to a meeting that they've scheduled with me. So Tina says it would be really cool if I offered workflow with templates. So that's going to be a course coming soon. I'm actually going to do. I was just sort of like formulating this early this morning. I'm going to add an area of services on my website about like workflow, you know, setup and automation and implementation. So it'll be like a done for you option. And then there's also, well, there's already a course on the one I just showed you. There's a whole course called Automating Your Onboarding Process, which will walk you through step-by-step how to set all of that up, what I just showed you. But yes, I'm definitely going to be doing this stuff because it's a lot of fun to do. I just had a call with somebody yesterday who has a nonprofit. She's starting to do very well, but she's not very big yet, but she does a lot of events and things. And she doesn't even have an accounting system to speak of. So I'm going to do the whole thing for her. I'm going to set her up in Kajabi so she can centralize and integrate all the processes for her events and things. And I'm going to set her up in QBO. I can do the whole thing. It's a lot of fun. And I encourage all of you to learn how to use a lot of these tools because it's a really fun way to consult with companies and you're really helping people, you know. This stuff really saves time and frees you up to do other more interesting things. So even though that's not a Zap per se, like I said, it used to be a Zap until they came out with these direct integrations. And then once I went to set it up, I was like, duh, I should have done this a lot, you know, much earlier, much sooner. Let's look at my support plan Zap. So this is something we just went over in very good detail in 97 and up, literally this week, where I showed the subject of the call that we did was on how to set up a training kind of service, you know, as an accountant or bookkeeper. And so here's my support plan Zaps. So what these do initially is every time somebody signs up for a support plan, and there's a bunch of different ones, so there's a separate Zap for each offer that I have. And you could see it's Kajabi to Airtable. So if somebody signs up for a basic CFO support plan, okay, don't show me this again, thank you. When the new purchase takes place in Kajabi for that particular offer, it creates a record in Airtable. Now this is a purchase based on, you know, it used to be called the 5-hour support plan. And it's for a 5-hour support plan, exactly as that name suggests. And so it takes the customer name and their email, and it creates the record in Airtable. And here's the duration. And most importantly, well, I mean, maybe not most importantly, but up there is the fact that in this Airtable project, I have a column that logs the duration. So she signed up for 5 hours. It's going to show in Airtable she signed up for 5 hours. Then, and all these other ones are just, by the way, they're just copies. I go in here, I make a copy, and I just change the information. I change the offer, to the CFO review plan. And with that, I changed the duration to whatever number of hours is appropriate for that. So that's all these are carbon copies of each other with different information tweaked based on the particular plan that they signed up for, right? Then when somebody schedules a session, so ScheduleOnce, and by the way, what's in between here that you don't see is that when they sign up for one of those support plans in Kajabi, Kajabi has a lot of really slick automation tools built into its backend. So in Kajabi, I set up behind each of those offers an automated email that goes out, which includes a link that they can click on to schedule their first or all 5 sessions with me, whatever the case might be. And so when they click that link and schedule, a session, that triggers this particular Zap, so that when a scheduled booking happens in ScheduleOnce, it's first thing I needed it to do was I needed the date field from ScheduleOnce to be able to speak properly to the date field in Airtable. The formatting was inconsistent. And so I actually just recently added this step. This is part of like these built-in tools that Zapier has that you can use to do what's called parsing the data, where you kind of take pieces of information, in this case, that came from ScheduleOnce. You kind of want to pull it apart into its components and put it back together, in this case, in a way that Airtable is going to understand. So the input value is the date as it appears from ScheduleOnce, which has this kind of long form with the day of the week and the full date and timestamp. And I told Zapier to convert that to this more basic format of just month, day, and year, right? And then confirming the time zone was Pacific. And again, I had to confirm the source formatting here. So this took some tweaking. I had to play around with different things until I got it to work. It didn't work right away. So sometimes these things are going to take a little bit of work to get them to work, but once they do, it's just beautiful, right? And again, confirming that the source time zone is also based on US Pacific, right? So once I parse the data out properly, now it can create the record in Airtable with the right dates in place. It takes the subject that they filled out when they scheduled the session in ScheduleOnce and sticks that in the notes in Airtable. I like having the meeting date and time information in the notes as well, even though that's going to go into the date field. There's the date, right? Which notice from the icon, it takes the date based on what I created in this previous step, in step 2. Okay, and here, this is hard to see, but the duration, as it drops into Airtable, now this is, remember, for a record where they scheduled a session. It may be hard to see, but there's a little minus sign in front of this. So basically, the duration is going to go into Airtable as a negative so that when they purchase 5 hours and that got logged from the other Zap, now this comes in and it's going to deduct 30 minutes of time from the time they have available, because now they've scheduled, or for that matter, used up 30 minutes of their time, right? And then, of course, it grabs the customer information that I need. So I have that all right there at my fingertips in Airtable. So what you're seeing here is a small piece of a bigger picture process that I teach in how to automate your training or coaching business, which is another course that's available in my site. Shameless promotion. But these are the kinds of things you can do that save time, because otherwise what would happen is every time somebody scheduled a session with me, I would have to manually go and log in an Airtable. And by the way, the beauty of this process in the end is that in Airtable, I can carve out these views that are specific to that client and then share a link with them so that they can easily click on that link and see, here's what you purchased and here's what you've used or scheduled. And based on that, you can see what's remaining. And in that same log, after each session, I upload the video from their session to box.com, grab the share link from Box and stick it in that same Airtable log. So in that one place, the client has access to everything relating to the sessions that they've signed up for and had with me. So it's a really slick way to provide a really cool service for the clients who are hiring me to, provide them with one-on-one support, right? And especially at the rates I charge for this, I want to deliver like a best-in-class experience for the clients. This helps me do that. Next, another real simple one, and it's going to seem kind of dumb, but I'm going to explain to you why I don't think it is. So this is a client of mine. His name's Ira. And he is very sort of not tech savvy, and he has an assistant who's a little better than him. I'm not sure how much, though. I think probably a lot better than him, but still not someone who has the patience to want to understand like all these sort of tech systems. So when I set these guys up as a client, I set them up with a Google Drive folder where, you know, they get a lot of paper coming into their office still. And I wasn't about to come into their office. So I said, we need a way for you to scan these documents and get them to me. And I use BillBees for them. So BillBees, you know, is a document storage and bill pay app. So I wanted the documents to be scanned and sent to BillBees. But also I wanted them in Google Drive. And I wanted to get a notification every time he uploaded files, because with this particular client, we were paying his bills for him, and I wanted to make sure that like nothing got paid late. So instead, I could have easily just given him the BillBees email that after he scanned documents, he could just forward them to BillBees. But I made it, I think, even simpler than that, because I logged in with him and set up this Google Drive folder, you know, in the client folder that I have for him. And it's just called Inbox. And I said, anytime you scan a document, just log into Google Drive and drag and drop it into the inbox. And so that's what this Zap is based on. So the trigger is based on when a new file appears in the folder in Google Drive, right? And the folder is called Ira Fairberg Inbox. So anytime a new file drops into that folder, this Zap is going to get triggered. And again, it's very simple. It basically sends an email to the BillBees email address for him, and it CCs me. Okay, and then I just configured a from name so that it stands out in my inbox when I get that CC on it. The subject: new file added to Google Drive with his name in parentheses, so I know exactly whose file it is. And then in the body, I just put this message: a new file has been received. And I put this in here just for my own head so that there was no question in my mind that, oh yeah, it's being forwarded to BillBees. Like, I don't have to worry about doing that. But what I like about this is, I get a copy of the email, which has the file attached that he uploaded to Google Drive, as you can see here. So about once a week, I can see his assistant just goes and scans all their stuff, and I get a bunch of these emails. But I like it because I can quickly click on the attachment from the CC that I get. And usually what I do is just analyze it real quick and make sure there's no like past due amounts. I just make sure that I see that the prior billing amount also shows as having been paid and that this one's not due like tomorrow or whatever. So it takes me 2 seconds. I glance at that attachment and then I archive it because I know the rest is being taken care of. It's going to get forwarded into BillBees. BillBees is going to read the document. It's going to sync. If it needs to, it's going to sync it over to QBO. And within about 15 minutes, it'll be available to be paid. And then, Kelly, who works with me, handles this client. She goes in once a week and just pays all the bills that need to get paid. And so again, with this process in place, I don't have to worry about a thing. I can rest assured it's all going to be there. So that's how I handle client file uploads. It was easier for me to just give him a folder and say, scan the document, drop it into the folder, and then the bots take care of the rest pretty much from there, right? And I can, it's just routing. Like I said in the beginning, it's just taking data from one place and putting it somewhere else. So I can do anything else I want to with this, right? I can probably even add a step that says, now move the document over into another folder if I wanted to, right? So I could get it out of the inbox because he has access to the inbox. So if I'm worried that he's going to go in there and screw something up, I can add that step in. Let's see. We have 2 more left that I want to talk about. So one is add a notification in Slack when a new record is added in Airtable. And I'm going to show you where this came up actually very, very recently. So let me go into this Airtable project, which 97 and Up has its own kind of project in Airtable. I use it a lot to store and track information about the program. I have like every call, we do the 2 weekly calls on Tuesday and Thursday. So every call that we've done since like January of 2019 is logged in here. Okay, but we also just started creating a document library. And what do you call it? You can see that I've started it off with the very documents from the webinar we're doing later today based on what Josh is going to be presenting on everything you need to know about S-Corps. The idea here is a lot of people have asked me, like, do we have templates that I can use if I'm a member of 97 and up. And I said, you know what? No, but it's a good idea. So little by little and over time, you can see I've got the file type designated here, and little by little and over time, I'll build this library and I'll carve out these different views where we'll have engagement letters as one carve out, that so you can look at all the sample engagement letters that people have sort of contributed from among our membership, right? So I'm starting this off, and I said, you know, I would love to have a way of knowing when somebody has, you know, and more importantly, I'd love to have a way for the members of 97 and up to know, you know, when a new sort of approved document has been added. So initially when they submit it, I have to kind of approve it, right? I don't want it to go in there the second somebody submits something. Somebody may make a mistake. There may be something wrong. So I have it set up where I create this status, right? So initially when it comes in, it's going to automatically come in with a status of submitted, and it comes in by way of a form that I've given to, you know, our members. And then once I confirm that everything looks okay, I'll change the status to published available. And that's where Zapier comes in. So I've carved out a view here that's based on only things that have been marked published, okay? And so what Zapier can do, and this is a really, you know, cool way that you can work with Zapier and Airtable, is you can create a Zap that's based on the trigger of a record appearing in a new view. So it's not just that the record appeared. Initially, the record appears here. I don't want anything to happen. It's when the record shows up in this new view, which is filtered based on the status of published. So when I change it to published, it's going to show up in this view where it wouldn't have been there before. And that's what's going to trigger Zapier to, you know, to start this process right here. Post notifications about new Airtable records in a view to a Slack channel, right? So over here, again, it's a new record in a particular view. I've defined that when it shows up in the view that's called published, then it's going to send a message to a channel in Slack. I customized the message, grabbing some of the dynamic content from what came into Airtable, so we can see this was contributed by Josh. Here are the details. Here's the name, accountable plan tracker. The description is, you know, the document description that came from Airtable, and then it lets you know what the file type is, that this was an Excel file. So it's just a way of letting people know, hey, there's a new document in the library. And let me show you what that looks like in Slack. So in Slack, I have a channel now called 97 Document Library. Okay, and so it's brand new. I literally just set this up last night, you know, because I literally just started building this document library this week. So I'll show you what this looks like. I can actually just sort of trick this. So if I just duplicate a record, it's going to make Zapier think there's a new record, right? So I'll trigger that. Let's come back over here, and I'll just make it run right now so we don't have to wait. Triggering on one new record, and boom. So I named the bot AirBot because it's from Airtable, and this is what it looks like. So anytime there's a new record sort of approved in the document library, this message will show up here in the 97 document library channel, which on my navigation, the way I've got it set up, is up here in the 97 core section. And so like I showed you, it gives you the details. I wish I could format this to make some of this stuff bold. Maybe in a future release, they'll do it. But at least I was able to get the image. You know, I require a cover image when people submit documents on this. So I have a nice looking cover, and it saves me the trouble of having to go hunting around for one. So that shows up in here just to give people a visual, you know, like the accountable plan has to do with reimbursements. So that's where the relevance of that comes in. And you can do stuff like this all day long. Just a lot of the integrations with Slack and things that you can do like this with Zapier are just based on triggering notifications to keep people informed and to save you the time of having to go actually, you know, tell people about it. Okay, and then the last Zap I wanted to show you today, and then we're kind of out of time already, is one that I also just recently learned to create, because as many of you know, I think, I have a lot of subscriptions, right? And so I want to know about it when somebody's payment fails in Stripe. I haven't checked. I'm sure there's something like this that I can do in PayPal. what do you call it? So what this does is, because in Stripe, if somebody's payment method fails, I have to sort of proactively log into Stripe and check that. So now I don't have to do that anymore, because now anytime a payment fails, and I don't want to open this because there is actually somebody's information in there based on a recent failed payment. But what it will do is it will send a notification to my main Nerd Enterprises Slack, my internal like sort of corporate Slack workspace, to let me know, hey, somebody's payment method failed. So I can go follow up with them. And it grabs the relevant information and includes it in the message in Slack that I get. So it's just, again, it's another time saver. It puts me on notice about something that I was finding I had to go into Stripe. And then Stripe is great, by the way. You can go in there. It's very easy to kind of run a report and say, show me all the failed payments for the last 30 days. And through that process, I've discovered like people in the subscription, their payment method failed and they didn't, Stripe gives them a notification. Actually, Kajabi gives them a notification and lets you know, hey, your payment method failed. Here's what you need to do. Just update your payment information, and Stripe will retry the payment method a couple of times before it sort of gives up. So bottom line, there were a couple of cases, not many, fortunately, I think by and large, everybody's good. I think people have good intentions, but there've been a couple of cases where like somebody signed up for a payment plan for Bulletproof Bookkeeping. And then, after the first payment, I don't know if they canceled it or it failed, whatever the case was, I didn't know about it because I wasn't paying attention. Now that I did, I noticed they only made one payment. And I wanted to make sure they didn't, continue to have access to the course until or unless they worked out something with me to, to finish up the payment plans that they had made the commitment to, to do. So that's another, again, simple Zaps that make my life easy. Just another thing that, saves me the trouble of having to go around. So privately, Greg messaged me. I don't think he'll mind me saying this publicly, saying, I hope they don't watch the recording. There's nothing in here that I showed that was that private, other than the fact that these were clients of mine and their names. And realistically, they probably don't watch these, but I'll review the recording to make sure there wasn't anything truly private that showed up here. And if there was, I'll edit it out or blur it or something.
The comment about them not being tech savvy over at Iris.
Oh no, they know. I've had conversations with him specifically. He and I are at war because when I first started working with him at the beginning of last year, I had him, he's a PI attorney. So I had him set up in Bill.com because Bill.com is the only service that lets you choose from two different payment accounts to pay things. So I needed to be able to pay out of his trust account or out of his general account, depending on if it was a disbursement from a case versus just an overhead expense. Bill.com is the only service that lets you choose from two different payment sources like that. So I was forced to use Bill.com for him. And then, long story short, something happened. He blamed Bill.com. It had nothing to do with Bill.com, but because of his lack of tech savvy, I failed at convincing him of that. And so he insisted no more Bill.com for trust checks. Everything needs to be printed. So I'm back to, after years of not having a printer in my office, I now have a printer just so I can print checks to pay out on his trust account. And so we get into some interesting and let's just call it spirited discussions about the fact that he's taken me backwards about 10 years in the technology. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. But that's it. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Zaps that I use, actually 9, including the Stripe payment fail one, that I use to make my life easy, that come up on pretty much a daily basis. Now I'm looking at the chat.
Totally a squirrel thought, but could you use Melio for one set of payments and Bill.com for another?
I could use 2 different ones. I have honestly concerns about Melio because there's just been a lot of issues with them. I think they have a lot of like kinks to iron out before I can say with confidence that I'd want to use them. And I know I've had conversations with David Leary to that effect, where he hasn't disagreed with me.
No, for sure. They're in the primetime spotlight, but they're not ready for prime time.
Yeah. So, so yeah, I mean, but the reality is for now, I'm going to print his checks for his trust account and I'm canceling his Bill.com account. I'm going to use Bilby's to pay all his other stuff. Because Bilby's makes it super easy, and they just keep getting better and better, and I love their interface. It's super easy, to go into Bilby's, and it's just like click, pay. If you need to get an approval, it's easy to do that. but you're not prevented from making payments without the approval, which some people see as a negative. But I see it as a positive because, like, you take a client like this is a client who has made it clear he never ever wants to see something paid late. He never ever wants to pay a dime of interest or a dime in late fees. So when it comes down to it with him, he would prefer I pay it without the approval than have to wait for the approval. So I like having the flexibility, but then if I want to and choose to, I can insist on having that sort of audit trail of the approval workflow by simply enforcing it on myself and requesting the approval and not paying anything until I have it, right? So basically the approval, the sort of compelling nature of the approval process is incumbent upon me to enforce. And I like it that way. I like having the flexibility. And I think they're going to work on having a second, the ability to have more than one payment source. Melio, a lot of people like because you can use credit cards, but they charge you such a stiff fee on the credit cards that if you're trying to do it for the rewards, you're barely making a spread, if at all, on the difference between the value of the rewards and the fees that you have to pay for the privilege of processing credit card payments in Melio. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's 10 minutes after 9. I need to go eat something, and don't forget, today at noon, we have the Everything You Need to Know About S-Corp's webinar. Josh is busy practicing right now in front of the mirror, I think. That's why he's not here with us. And that's that. So I'll get the recording of this up, as always, some point tomorrow, along with this week's Bulletproof Bookkeeping webinar. And that's it. You know where to find me if you have any questions.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Greg. We'll see you a little later.
Hey, Seth, can I ask something real quick?
Yeah, make it quick because I got to run.
Yeah, sorry. I hate to piece it, but what would motivate you to keep a client that has such trouble if they're making a lot of trouble for you to, do the work that you need to do?
He's not making a lot of trouble, and trust me, there are times he's on the chopping block with me. But this is also a guy I've known for many, many years, and we love each other and we fight like brothers sometimes, but all in all, it's all good. And for the most part, I have Kelly doing all the bookkeeping work. I collect the money each month. I pay her, and everybody's happy. Every once in a while, we get into some friction over the way that he kind of ties my hands on using tech. He just doesn't trust it, which is funny to me, but
okay,
it is what it is. Let's put it this way. With a lot of people, I would not put up with it, but this guy is, like I said, he's sort of like a longtime friend, and he's kind of like a brother to me. So cool. I put up with him.
Thanks for explaining.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, appreciate it.
You got it, Will. Good seeing you.
Good to see you.
All right.